Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is 5:30 p.m. and the live stream has commenced. You may begin your meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I see we have indeed quorum, so I'm going to call this public meeting under the Planning Act, Wednesday, October 9th at 5:30 into session. And I welcome members of the SLT, our presenter, and the viewing public. As usual, at this time, we have the land recognition statement, and today the honor goes to Councillor Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you, Councillor, and I now turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will begin with some opening remarks. Public meeting under the Planning Act, Wednesday, October 9th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. The Town of Pelham is holding hybrid public meetings. A hybrid meeting involves a mixture of in-person and remote attendance and participation. Please note that no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. The Planning Department will be providing a presentation regarding the subject application. Public meetings under the Planning Act are formal meetings requiring decorum. This means that all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak virtually or will be participating in person, you'll be provided an opportunity to address the committee at the public portion of the meeting. If someone ahead of you has made the same comments that you wish to make, there's no need to repeat them. Please keep all comments concise. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Inappropriate comments and behavior such as clapping will not be tolerated. If decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons asked to leave. If you wish to receive a copy of the Notice of Decision, please contact the planner responsible for the application in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is to follow the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to item number 3, adoption of the agenda. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrand that the agenda for the October 9th, 2024 public meeting under the Planning Act, special meeting of Committee of the Whole, be adopted as circulated. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on the agenda as presented? Not seeing any. All those in favor? All those none opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings you to item number 4, being disclosure of pecuniary interests.
Thank you. And after viewing the agenda, does any council member have a pecuniary interest or general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to item number 5, and I will now read the opening remarks into the record. Town of Pelham application for zoning bylaw amendment 701 and 717 Quaker Road, file number AM-07-2024, a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the property for 54 block townhouse dwellings as shown on the submitted site plan. The Planning Act requires under Section 34 that council must hold at least one public meeting for informing the public in respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The public meeting has been called to satisfy this requirement. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on September 16th, 2024. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. In addition to providing information, we will also receive comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. If you wish to receive a copy of the Notice of Decision, please contact the planner in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is available on the Town of Pelham website and will be displayed on the last slide of the staff presentation to follow shortly. If a person or public body would otherwise have the ability to appeal the decision of the Town of Pelham to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but they do not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Pelham before the bylaw is passed, they are not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendment, and therefore any comments received will be considered by council. To you, Mr. Mayor, we do have our Manager of Planning, Shannon Larocque, with us this afternoon.
Ms. Larocque, you have the floor, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and any interested members of the public for attending tonight. This public meeting is for a development known as Bauer Landing, and the application that council is considering tonight is an application for a zoning bylaw amendment. This property is located at 701 and 717 Quaker Road. It's located on the south side of Quaker Road, west of Clare Avenue, and east of Pelham Street. And the purpose of the requested zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the lands from what is right now residential multiple 1 site-specific zone with a hold on it and an R1 zone to the same residential multiple 1 site-specific zone. And that would permit, I'll give you the details of that in later slides, but that'll permit 54 block townhouse dwellings as shown on the submitted site plan from the developer. This is the proposed site plan. It shows the 54 block townhouses, and it shows 2 access roads onto Quaker Road. It's a private road. It also shows 2 parking areas for visitors. One in this location, if you can see my cursor, and one over here. There are 10 visitor parking spaces there. Each unit also has a driveway that would accommodate a parking space and a private garage that would accommodate a parking space. So there's a total of 64 outdoor parking spaces plus the garage spaces for each of the units. At this point, the units are proposed to be 2-story units, and they're planned to be smaller unit sizes than previous versions of this plan. And speaking of previous versions of this plan, some members of council have seen this plan before. In 2017, there was a portion of this property that was approved to have 20 block townhouse units on it, and the plan looked like this at that time. Since that time, the developer acquired some additional lands and then came forward in 2022 and expanded the development as shown here. And that made for a total of 27 block townhouse units. So we're back again. The developer's acquired some additional land and now wants to increase it to a total of 54 units. And I know that at the public meeting for Maplewood Estates that council had back in September, there were definitely some comments made about the desire for the redevelopment and intensification in this neighborhood to be connected, to be integrated and well thought out. And as a result, the developer of Maplewood Estates, which is the property directly to the west of this property, and the developer of this property, Bauer Landing, have agreed to work together. And so he's actually allowing for an extension of the private road for Bauer Landing onto the future road in Maplewood Estates so that there'll be an outlet for this development there. So that way people could walk, people could also drive. We don't have as much of a disconnected development. It's more integrated with the community. And council will be receiving the recommendation report for Maplewood Estates with more details on that at its next regular meeting. And in terms of the planning framework for this application, this is probably going to be the first application that council gets to make a decision on under the new provincial planning statement. That comes into effect on October the 20th. It's pretty similar in a lot of ways to the previous provincial policy statement that council would make its decisions against. So this property is still within a settlement area, and of course settlement areas are still going to be the focus of most growth and development. It also encourages land use patterns within those settlement areas that make a good and efficient use of land and resources, that prioritize existing and planned infrastructure and public services, that support active transportation, that are transit supportive and freight supportive. This designation also still supports general intensification and redevelopment for complete communities and planning for a range and mix of housing options. And in the Niagara Region official plan, this property is within the delineated built-up area. It requires a range and mix of densities, lot and unit sizes, as well as housing types. that are planned to meet people at all stages of their lives in terms of their housing needs. 25% of all new residential units in the town annually will be located in this area, and residential development is encouraged to incorporate sustainability into its design and construction. And the town's official plan designates this property as being within the urban living area and the built boundary. That designation permits all types of residential uses, including block townhouses. And there's a policy in the town's official plan, B115, that states that when council is considering a zoning bylaw amendment or a site plan application to permit a townhouse development, it will be satisfied that the proposal respects the character of adjacent residential neighborhoods in terms of height, bulk, and massing, that it can be easily integrated with surrounding land uses, that it will not cause or create traffic hazards or an unacceptable level of congestion on surrounding roads, and finally, that it's located on a site that has adequate land area to incorporate required parking, recreational facilities, landscaping, and buffering. The town's zoning bylaw currently zones this property R1. That's the 717 Quaker Road property, and that site-specific RM1 133 hold, which is the remainder of the property. So the 2022 approved Bower Landing development. The R1 zone doesn't permit block townhouses at this time, and so there is the need to change the zoning on that portion of the property. And of course, the requested zoning change will facilitate site-specific regulations to permit the site plan that the developer is now proposing. And the holding symbol that was in place on that original zoning for the Bower Landing development relates to the need for a condominium and a site plan agreement before building permits. That holding symbol would stay at this time as part of this current application. And the site-specific requests, of course, relate to limiting the use of the property to block townhouses, recognizing the reduced lot frontage, because the frontage really consists just of those road accesses. So it's pretty minimal in terms of frontage. There's also the request to reduce the minimum front yard and the maximum front yard to 3.05 meters because you'll have units on that second road access that are now closer to Quaker Road than what was in the easterly portion of the development. Perhaps I can share that plan again so that you can see. Have it. Now I can zoom in so you can get a better look at these portions of the development. I find on the PowerPoint the resolution is not always great. So you can see the minimal road frontages and the setback that's being reduced as we have a unit now up here at Block F. Back to the PowerPoint. So the side yards will be staying as previously requested when the 2022 bylaw amendment was approved. So 1.5 meter setbacks in terms of setbacks from units to side lot lines. And there's one unit that will be a 6 meter where the rear of the building faces a side yard. The rear yards will be 8.67 meters, and there'll be a setback of 2.9 to one dwelling in particular, and that's from the private road, unit 13, and still 6 meters to the garages, which was what was planned as part of the 2022 development. Landscape strips were written in site specifically from certain properties from the private road. Those are going to be carried forward in terms of the new zoning request. And then there's a 1.5 also on the new section of road for landscape strip width. The application was circulated to commenting agencies and town departments for comment. And we did receive some comments. The District School Board of Niagara and Enbridge had no objections, and Town Public Works outlined requirements for access, lot grading and drainage plan, servicing plan, and stormwater management report as part of future site plan applications. They also advised that all the costs for servicing this development would be the responsibility of the developer, and that servicing should be coordinated with the Quaker Road reconstruction project that's underway right now. And in terms of public comments, we didn't receive any in writing in advance of this meeting, but I understand we will be receiving some verbally within a few minutes. And there were a number of technical reports that were provided with this application. They include a functional servicing report, a planning justification report, a stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment for the 701 Quaker Road, and the ministry acknowledgement letter has been received for that portion of the property. They also provided a stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment for 717 Quaker Road, and that's been submitted to the ministry, and the acknowledgement letter should be coming soon. If anyone wishes to review those reports in detail or in full, they are available on the town's website at the link displayed on the slides. And if council, I just want to talk about next steps. I didn't put a slide in here about that, but next steps. If council were to approve the zoning bylaw amendment, there is still site plan approval that's required for this development. So that would deal with all of the technical design elements, lot grading and drainage and servicing and all of those matters. And then following that, once they have site plan approval, they would be able to apply for an exemption to condominium approval. And that can be granted by the Director of Community Planning and Development because all of the technical matters have been done. So it isn't another public meeting. It's really just an exemption from that additional process where they deal with registering the condominium because all of the technical matters have been dealt with through the site plan process. And as all public meetings at the town of Pelham, there is no decision or recommendation about this application being made tonight. Once all of the comments are received, town staff will prepare a recommendation report for council's review and decision at a later date. Please ensure that if anyone wishes to receive notices, either they sign the sign-in sheet or provide something in writing to us as soon as possible, and we'll add you to the mailing list. And if there are any questions or comments on this application in the future, please contact me, Shannon LaRocque, Manager of Planning, through the telephone number and email on the slide. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. LaRocque, for that presentation. And I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to the agent's presentation, and we are joined tonight by Ethan Lamont of Upper Canada Consultants, and I would welcome Mr. Lamont to the podium.
Ethan, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I did have a presentation. Could I start it from? Sure.
Jody, you should be able to just open it on the podium.
Can I open it through here?
Why don't I see yours? Is yours here? It's not yours.
Is it on the PDF? You might have to open it on the PDF.
It is on the PDF, you're right. Why isn't it sharing?
And you have to go back to Zoom, I think.
No. I'm gonna share it from my screen. Sorry. Why it won't share?
Okay.
I'd come to help, but I know I wouldn't.
There it is. Found it. Sorry about that.
We got all the confidence in the world in you.
So my name is Ethan Lamont. I'm a planner with Upper Canada Consultants. I'm going to share a few slides and then it'll be available for questions and comments. If I can get this to work. So the subject lands are shown highlighted in red on the screen. So they're comprised of two municipal addresses, these being 701 Quaker Road and 717 Quaker Road. So the yellow dashed line shows the separation between those properties. The properties have since merged, so it is one parcel. 717 is the smaller parcel and 701 is the larger one. In total, the subject lands are about 1.5 hectares, or about 3.68 acres in area. They're irregular shape, which is the result of the historical consolidation process, which led to the creation of this property, which Shannon touched on, and I'll get into more detail in a couple of slides. Under the town's official plan, the lands are designated as urban living area / built boundary. The 701 Quaker Road lands are zoned as a site-specific residential multiple 1 zone, and 717 Quaker Road is zoned as residential 1. So as I mentioned just a moment ago, the development parcels subject to tonight's applications have been amalgamated from various other parcels over the past 7 years, beginning in 2017. So you can see in this slide the various development approvals that the property has been subject to. I tried to lay it out with numbers and color coding here. So the original parcel, which is number 1, was severed from the lands to the east in 2017. Which themselves were then severed into 4 single detached lots fronting onto Clare Avenue. Site-specific residential multiple 1 zoning was approved for Part 1 to permit a 20-unit townhouse development. Since that original parcel was created and the site-specific zoning was approved, the owner acquired additional adjacent lands and added them to the property. So Part 2 was severed from the rear yards of 711 and 717 Quaker Road and added to the property in 2019. Part 3 was severed from 725 Quaker Road and added to the property in 2020, and Part 4 was severed from 725 Quaker Road and added to the property in 2021. And then site-specific zoning for a 27-unit townhouse development was approved for Parts 1 through 4 in 2022. And then finally, this year, the owner acquired the remainder of 717 Quaker Road, which is shown as Part 5 on this drawing. And the applications propose additional changes to the development proposal to accommodate this parcel. So this slide shows the previous development for which draft plan and site-specific zoning was approved by council in 2022. So this is the development consisting of a private road connecting to Quaker Road with 27 condominium townhouse dwellings. And this slide shows the current proposal. So the current proposal incorporates the newly acquired 717 Quaker Road lands into the development while maintaining the general layout of the previously approved draft plan. The current development proposal includes 54 townhouses, which are smaller than the previously approved units in an effort to assist with housing affordability. With the inclusion of the 717 Quaker Road lands, the development now includes a second access to Quaker Road. The development also maintains the ability to connect with the lands to the west, which Shannon went over in her presentation. So the proposal is subject to a zoning bylaw amendment to establish the land use and built form permissions, and draft plan of vacant land condo to establish the individual ownership of the units. And should the applications be approved, the development will be subject to site plan approval to address detailed design matters. So moving on to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. So there's two aspects to the proposed amendment. So first would be some minor modifications to the previously approved site-specific zoning, which are largely technical in nature. So the first would be the change of the minimum setback to Quaker Road, which previously applied to that thin strip of land connecting to Quaker Road. Now with the inclusion of 717, that 30-meter setback's not a requirement anymore. And the second modification is the addition of a minimum side yard provision to the rear wall, which essentially replaces the amenity yard provision since the previous development was approved under the old zoning bylaw. That provision has changed under the new zoning bylaw. And the second aspect of the zoning is to expand the site-specific residential multiple one zoning onto the newly acquired 717 Quaker Road lands, which are shown in yellow on this slide. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ethan, for your presentation. I'll turn to the clerk.
Through Mr. Mayor, we do have two pre-registered speakers from the public this evening. They are both joining us over Zoom, so we will begin with Mr. Danny Kasunik. Please allow Mr. Kasunik a moment to connect. Good afternoon. Hello?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Thank you kindly. So just thanking council and Mr. Mayor for your time this evening and giving me the ability to talk at today's meeting and voice some of the concerns that I had with the proposed site plan that was mailed out to us. Just looking at the plan itself, I know that the original plan grew from 27 units now down to, or I should say up to 54 units. And just wondering if the planning department and the designer took into account the extra amount of cars that will be coming onto Quaker Road. Going from 27 units to 54 probably now equates to about 110 cars that'll be regularly traveling down Quaker Road to access these properties. In addition, they'll have visitors also that'll be accessing these properties as well, which means there'll be a lot more traffic on the road, a lot more congestion on a road that's already quite congested as is. Also with the, I guess the amount of units as well, the limited parking spaces could be an issue where there's a potential where people who come to visit will be looking for places to park where they might end up parking on some of the side streets and I guess congesting that as well. In addition to this, I had heard something in the presentation about, I guess, the planner looking at how this land would adjoin to the land next to it. I know there's no specific details that were offered tonight about how that connection would be made between the two, but in a 400-meter stretch of road to add in 3 additional intersections for the amount of cars, I think would just cause havoc in terms of traffic. And also it's a health and safety concern because now you have 3 points of access where drivers might not stop at the intersection and they might proceed through and potentially injure or damage someone's property if they were to drive across the road. Similar to what had happened, I guess, not too recently from on Haste Road when a driver drove through the intersection and right into someone's home. So some of these comments are the same comments I made in the previous presentation about the Maplewood subdivision. I just hope that the planning department and the council takes my comments into advisement and realize that I guess these subdivisions could be built in obviously in multi-phase elements where you could potentially tie these roads into the property to the south where it'd be better access to either Line or Clare Avenue or Pelham Street from the other side versus adding all these additional cars to Quaker Road, which, like I said, is already quite congested as is, and there's a high volume of traffic and speed of the people who drive down that road regularly, as it is a main east-west artery in the Pelham area. So basically, that's all the comments I had tonight. I just hope the council and the planner takes it into advisement and renders that in their thoughts when they're producing their plan going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kiznunek, Danny, for joining us tonight and for providing your thoughts to council. Thank you very much. I turn to the clerk.
Through Mr. Mayor, our next public speaker is Kyle Sager, and I do understand Mr. Sager is joining us over Zoom as well.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep, go ahead, Kyle.
Perfect. I just want to thank you for your time as well, and also thank you for setting up the public notice and giving us the opportunity to come forward tonight and just address our concerns. So I also, just like Danny did speak at the last public meeting that we had in relation to the property to the west of tonight's Bauer Landing. So really, I'm not going to repeat what Danny said, but I do have the same concerns in relation to the traffic, especially seeing how close this development is for Bauer Landing, two arteries now coming on to Quaker Road, right next to Clare, which I know in the future is going to start to also get busier with the new developments that are proposed for the south of Bauer Landing. So we have, just for Bauer Landing, we have 2 points of access onto Quaker Road alone, right next to a stop sign. And like Danny said, within a 400-meter stretch roughly of Quaker Road. And then if we take this into consideration with the current proposal for the development to the west of Bauer Landing, where they also want to have an access point onto Quaker Road. Now we're looking at 3 new access points onto Quaker Road. And like Danny said, that's a significant amount of traffic for a road that is already very busy and is going to get busier in the near future, especially after the construction is complete on Quaker Road. I also would be curious to see how the 2 developers are proposing to work together to potentially connect their two developments. If it's something where the development to the west of Bauer Landing would then become an L shape, creating 3 access points onto Quaker Road, yet connecting to Bauer Landing, or if that would be eliminating that 3rd access point onto Quaker and it would remain the 2 that Bauer Landing is proposing, or how that would work. Regardless, I still think that this is a significant amount of traffic to be placing onto Quaker, especially when there's going to be a large development coming to the south of Bauer Landing. That, like Danny said, it would be nice to see if there was some communication there where they connected it back there instead of dumping everything onto Quaker. Now, I may have heard wrong, and I didn't see it in the initial plans, but I thought I heard something about there was an initial plan in 2017 for 4 lots on Clare where there was the potential for a road to have been going on to Clare. So I just wanted to put my comments out there that I find the safety of the increased traffic, especially when we're looking at having bike lanes or sidewalks and things put onto Quaker Road, and the increased pedestrian traffic, but now you're adding more vehicular traffic onto the road. I just want to make sure that safety is addressed. And I also don't know if there has been a road study done to see what the current rate of traffic is going down Quaker Road. Because I know during the day, in the morning and in the evening when you're coming home and you're going past, Rice and Quaker, I know this is going out of Pelham. However, Welland and Pelham do share this road together. Traffic gets very busy at these intersections and it's only going to get worse. I thank you again for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sager, for joining us this evening and bringing your comments to council. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. That does conclude our pre-registered speakers. Seeing as no one is in the gallery, I will check our clerk's email address. And Mr. Mayor, it is 6:04 p.m. We have not received any emails. If you would like to move to committee input, you may.
Okay, thank you. I will now open it to committee. Any questions to either one of the presenters? And we'll go to Deputy Mayor Wink.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. To Ethan, This is the third iteration of this project. And, you know, I'm hoping that this is the last iteration. I assume that it would because the property to the west there is already sold and whatever. My concern is obviously if you get a approval of this application, there's more work that has to be done to get final approval. But when do you think that the owner of the property would be ready to do servicing on these lands, because it's going to affect the Quaker Road reconstruction? We've seen it lots of times where a road gets redone and then new development goes in and that road doesn't look like a new road anymore. So any timeline on that?
Through the mayor to the question, so actually our engineering team is in contact with the region about the road reconstruction to make sure that the infrastructure that is necessary to service this development is in place, so that in the event or when this ultimately comes to construction, that those connections already exist so that the road doesn't have to be dug up right after it's built. So
the timeline's rather short then?
Well, this is happening in advance of like site plan approval. It's provisional, just so that that infrastructure is in place when the time comes that the approval for this development comes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Now, next I'll go to Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. I'm reading through it. I'm struck by one thing, and perhaps I'm misunderstanding this, but it appears to me that the drainage is designed for like a 5-year storm event. I wash my car and it becomes a storm event right after I do it, so I just wondered if that proves to be the case, or am I misunderstanding something there?
Ethan, although I must say, Councillor, that would usually be questioned on the site plan. Okay. And I'll turn to the planner on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Our Public Works team will review the drawings that are submitted and the functional servicing report and stormwater management report to make sure that it meets the town's engineering guidelines, which set out all of those criteria, which storm events to design to and all of that.
Thank you, Mayor, but I raised that only because it's in the report and that we're seeing tonight as a 5-year event, and it looks that doesn't seem to me to be sufficient. The other thing that I would ask about is the stormwater management. There's an oil and grit separator described in one of the items there. Is there a program for design and cleaning that type of thing?
Yeah, typically there would be a maintenance schedule associated with an OGS.
Okay. And finally, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to ask a question about the one of the things that comes up quite frequently, and I don't know where this applies or where we can ask about this, but it's in the we have this problem with refuse on the job sites, and I've seen it written into some of the documents, but not consistently, that we require some sort of review and containment plan for refuge at the job site. Is that going to be a standard type of a thing?
I'll go to the manager of planning.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Olson. I can look into that for you. I believe there are some clauses in our site plan agreement and also potentially in our building bylaw, some requirements there with respect to keeping building sites clean. So I can look into that for you, and I'll provide a response in the recommendation report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nisnik.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of comments. Just wondering, and maybe you did make some efforts to acquire the 711 Quaker Road, but that was unsuccessful. But it seems sort of sad that property is going to be kind of surrounded now with block townhouses and sitting in that little alcove all by itself. Was wondering if there were any efforts to contact that landowner and ask to acquire that property as well.
Through the mayor to the question, yeah, my understanding is my client had reached out to that owner and was unsuccessful in acquiring that.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm just a little confused with the setback being 30 meters on Quaker Road, and now you're going to reduce it to 3. Is that for just the property at like 717? Because now that's going to be a side of a building along Quaker Road? Is that through, I guess maybe to Shannon for that one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Previously, you had a long road before you got to your first unit on the east side of the development. Now you're going to have a side of a unit close to Quaker Road at the second driveway.
That's on the west side, though.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So that other one is still just a long driveway because there's properties there on each side, so you can't put
That's right.
townhouses there. Okay, I'm just wondering how that's going to look like aesthetically, because you've got these older homes set back quite nicely, and then you're going to have the new side property sitting almost on Quaker Road with just approximately 10 feet setback from the road. So I just wonder if that could be maybe rethought of. And then happy to see smaller units going in, so that hopefully will make them therefore more affordable. That's just a comment, so thank you very much on that. And then my other question was, again, there's no, I'm just concerned because usually on private roads, and this you may be able to help me here, they're more narrow than a regular town road. So parking becomes an issue. 10 parking spaces for 54 units of extra spacing is not very many. Now, I do see you have a third little spot there for some more parking. I'm not sure if I'm reading that correctly, kind of at the bottom of that one little curve area. Is there more parking there, like 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces?
Correct, yeah, there was actually 3 visitor parking areas.
Okay, so just with the narrow rows, and then you've got people parking on the one side, I guess through you to planning, I would hope maybe the site plan does have no parking on one side, and that would be in order to facilitate emergency vehicles to get through and access those. Because I know some of our newer subdivisions, even though they're almost normal-sized streets, if there's parking on both sides, you cannot get through.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this development would have a fire route running through it, so there would be no parking at all on this private road. Parking would have to be within the driveways, within the garages, or within the designated visitor parking spaces.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. So then comes the problem with parking across a sidewalk and living on a street with the sidewalks on my side, we are not supposed to park across the sidewalk, right? So just wondering how that would be addressed, because I'd rather them be in the driveway crossing, blocking a sidewalk than being on the road. So just a comment there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there actually aren't sidewalks within this condominium development. They're typically not required because the road is quite narrow and it basically serves as a private driveway for the residents within there. So there are no sidewalks proposed that would be impeded by vehicles parking in the driveways.
Good, thank you very much. And then just once again, I don't see any open space for running, climbing, throwing a ball, no park space. So that's a little disappointing, especially since this one will be kind of the newest development starting on that south side of Quaker Road. And so there is absolutely no playground, open space south of Quaker Road for anyone to access. So whether a block could be taken out and put in some open space would be a nice gesture, I think, for the community to be.
I'll go to the manager of planning. Is there any other parkettes or parkland on that side of South Pelham Street and on the south part of Quaker Road within walking distance that isn't showing up here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. At present, there is not. However, the lands to the south are part of the South Fawn Hill Secondary Plan area, and as staff, we recognize that it's a priority to have parkland in there. And so when that comes online, then you will see parkland close within walking distance of the site, hopefully close to Quaker Road.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll go to Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for your presentation, Ethan. I want to go back to one of my previous councilors' comments with regards to the infrastructure. We've gone from 20 to 54 units. Obviously, the size of piping gets a lot larger when you have 54 units. And I know you commented that everything's been taken care of. So you're confirming that all the sizing of the piping has been taken care of for the increase of the pipe sizes for these units? Is that what you confirmed?
Through the mayor, to the question, are you referring to the pipe sizes in Quaker Road or the pipe sizes in the development?
No, the pipe sizes in Quaker Road.
Yeah, through the mayor to the question, the infrastructure in Quaker Road anticipates this development yield.
Yeah, like my previous councilor mentioned, I don't want to see Quaker Road torn up.
Right.
After we just develop it. With regards to the number of units, was there a traffic study that took care of the number of units we're putting in there?
There was not a traffic study required for these applications, so the one was not provided.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eckert.
Just a quick question. It looks like this has come to us, or it doesn't look like it has come to us in kind of piecemeal fashion as you acquired more property. And I know the question was asked by my colleague, but is the developer finished trying to acquire land and now we're going to proceed with this? Or is he still acquiring and we'll see you back in a few months to make another adjustment?
Through the mayor.
Not that you have a crystal ball, but...
Yeah, through the mayor to the question, that's my hope. I don't like coming back and getting the approval again. I mean, this is the second time in a couple of years. Obviously, I can't predict the future, but just based on the fact that we're here with an application and we've put a lot of time and effort in getting this before council, my hope is that this is the last application and it actually gets built after this.
Thank you. That's good.
Okay, thank you, Council. Any other questions to either Ethan or town planning? To Ms. Councillor Nesnick?
Sorry, just one final comment. So that probable connectivity to the east of this, to the west of the other Maplewood estates is, I think, imperative for the success of this design south of Quaker Road. So those are just my comments. So I'm just, I'm so pleased to see that both developers are understanding, are thinking on that, and will work towards coming up with a connectivity, because I think that's imperative, that something come in off South Pelham for that connectivity, or either south down towards the bottom. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Again, any other questions from councillors? Not seeing any, I turn to the clerk.
Through Mr. Mayor, that brings us to the presentation of resolutions. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink that committee receive report 2024-221 for information as it pertains to file number AM-07-2024, and that committee direct planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on the topic for council's consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the resolution? Not seeing any, call the question. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, resolution carries.
Thank you. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson that committee receive the applicant's presentation for information. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. On any discussion? All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt that committee receive the written correspondence, receive the verbal presentations made by the public. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Excellent. Mr. Mayor, that brings you to adjournment. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Nisnik that this special committee of the whole public meeting under the planning.
Thank you. All those in favor? See none opposed. Meeting is adjourned.